In this video, I'm going to be talking about some of my go-to strategies for terrain for D&D. Notably, I like to start out with my Megamat Chessex mat. This is a mat you can draw on with a wet erase marker, and you can easily set up little stuff. Dwarven Forge stuff I usually like to use when I'm doing a dungeon crawl, and thus I have a set space I need to set up. But they're also somewhat useful for setting on a mat like this to make little bits of scenery and buildings and stuff like that. Another very useful thing for a setup like this is the Plast craft buildings. These are unassembled buildings that come with these sort of cardboard and resin material that you sort of just put together, and you can do it a lot nicer than that one, but I kind of put together that little guy pretty quick. Very interesting. I'll have to try out more of these in the future. Also, the Hearst Arts stuff. If you don't know what Hearst Arts molds are, these are molds that you can use for D&D stuff, mainly like tiles and little bricks you can then build stuff out of. Now, these are made out of dental stone, which as a material to come out of all these molds is nice because it's cheap and it's solid, but as you can see, it's very difficult to protect because it's not like resin. If you knock around this stuff, it's just going to chip very easily because it's not meant to be anything. Now, of course, these tiles that I made out of dental stone, those other ones seem to sit together pretty nicely, and I don't really have any complaints. You know, Hearst Art stuff is really good if you need to do like this really big like terrain thing that you need a ton of different tiles for. It's a very cheap method of doing things. Also, if you like to put together like little scenery things like this, it's also very nice because you can do everything custom. I showed off this piece before. This is the little bar scene that I made out of Hearst Arts stuff. Vast majority of this is actually cast in resin, but there are some, dental stone parts mixed in here and there. But the vast majority of these things have been cast in resin. And as you can see, they make a nice little portable thing. So if you happen to have need to make a tavern scene on the go and don't have much time to set up, you can just kind of cast a bunch of pieces like this, and you'll be ready to go in just a second. Which again, I never know if my players are going to start something in the tavern, if I'm going to suddenly need like, a little scene where they're in a room or something like that. So having little modular pieces like this is very convenient when your players, even your players don't really know where they're going to go. Here you can see I can mix together some different materials. There's some clear resin as well as regular resin with those. And these next little bits are going to be little pieces that I found at the craft store. I believe most of these were found on deep clearance at the Michael's craft store. So you could find little mirrors like this, which are fun little bits and bobs. And I found this amazing little like magic bowl thing. I'm not sure that this is like, just I'm not exactly sure what that's actually used for in a craft sense, but it makes a nice little magic ball or a scrying circle or something like that. Very cool stuff you can find at the craft store in the clearance section. I highly suggest you check that out and see what you can find. And we have the pre-painted stuff. Obviously, if you're going to use a map like this, having some of the pre-painting stuff is very useful. This is all WizKids stuff, I believe. This is all from both their D&D and the Pathfinder lines. When you're using nice tiled things, sometimes it's nice to have some little bits of scenery like this you can put on to, engage your players a little bit more. And finally, we have some painted Reaper Bones stuff. So you can see here, these were not treated properly in my patented system, and some of the white bones is showing through, so follow my previous videos if you want to learn how to prime this stuff properly. Ironically, the clear plastic stuff, the clear bones material, didn't actually have much chippage at all compared to the white bones material. And here's some of the stuff I previously showed from the WizKids terrain line. Also some really nice stuff if you want to paint it up quickly and then have it just for your terrain map as well. And finally, we have some, here's a mix of stuff. The first little bits here are from the the Lord of the Rings game. And this is actually from the Lord of the Rings miniature game starter set from Games Workshop. Nice little bits of terrain, clearly meant for, the War Games miniature stuff, for, like, cover and stuff like that. But, they work just as well for D&D. Speaking of working well for D&D, here's some Warlord Games pieces. This is the Ruined Farmhouse, which is a little bit of modular terrain you can kind of set up in multiple ways. I made 2 little small ruined buildings. You can see me paint this on one of my previous painting streams. It's nice little stuff like this. You can make a ruined village with lots of little buildings to explore fairly quickly, and you can set it up in any kind of unique way you need to. That's why I like little materials like this that don't specifically have floors. That way you can set it up on the mat like this, and it's very easy and quick. And finally, we have some odds and ends here. These were from a store called Big Lots, which is a discount store. And I believe these are meant to be for some sort of garden display stuff. They're kind of cheaply made stuff that's supposed to be, I think, set up like, I don't know. Anyways, it was basically a bunch of cheap little plastic hedges here. Maybe they're made out of some sort of ceramic material. But it's super helpful to have some hedges like this, just in case you need to, I don't know, have some sort of like little scene in hedges. That way you'll just have them right away to use as terrain and cover and stuff like that. And there's the infamous dollar store wagon. I know some people are still discovering this little guy. You can get these at the Dollar Tree for $1, and it's a nice little wagon. I've gotten a ton of use out of this thing so far. And some more odds and ends. This is the dollar store version of the Mage Knight cage. And some random toys that I found at the Goodwill by the pound that I crafted into some terrain stuff. As you can see, it's just, little stuff like this looks really nice on the grid. And can be used as like little markers to denote different things. And finally, I'll give you a very quick example of how to set up a dungeon with just some of these things. Players have found some sort of goblinoid cave. The leader is gone, but his room is still there. So they're going to explore this cave, and I want to make sure there's a lot of little things for them to interact with. First off, I'm going to throw in the big scary totem there right at the entrance. Just sort of let them know they're in a goblinoid controlled area. I made some lovely little mushrooms as custom terrain, so I'm just going to kind of throw those in there. Kind of as a, almost like a red herring for your players. Some mantic terrain there for a little walled-off fortified storeroom. The dollar store cage in there in the main room. And then we have the guards' sleeping area, complete with some little tiny beds. And finally, we have some Lady Sabella fur rugs there in the leader's room. I'm going to set up a little area to showcase where his stuff is. There's a Hearst art fountain with a monster head from a failed casting. And a little campfire in the middle of that room. And a table in the leader's room. As well as a brazier as well. And have the switch. Now this is the classic Hearst Arts switch. This will turn off the barrier that I'm going to set up in front of the leader's room. So the leader's room is the first thing that the players are going to encounter. And if they can't counterspell the magical barrier, they'll have to try to find the switch that'll turn that off. So there you have it. Does not take long to set up a lovely little encounter room, which is good because my players certainly take their time in figuring out where they want to go, and maybe they'll go to one place, tear through it really quickly, and want to move on to another area of the game. In this case, I have my mat. I can easily just wipe this clean and set up a new room if they figure, well, maybe we don't want to try to go any further here, we want to go someplace else. Or if they're just really in just a hack and slash move and they want to just tear through like 3 rooms within 45 minutes, then it's very easy to do with this setup. So I hope you've enjoyed this very quick view of how I handle terrain in most of my D&D games. If you have any questions about any specific aspect of how I handle this, please let me know in the comments and I will answer your questions and maybe do a video talking more in depth about terrain for D&D.